This is the Horse Radio Network. This is episode 242 of Horse Tip Daily. A different horse tip, a different equine topic, a different equestrian expert every day. Horse Tip Daily brings the world of equine knowledge to you one day at a time. This tip is sponsored by FeedXL. You can visit them at feedxl.com. Enjoy today's tip. Howdy, everybody. Glenn the Geek back with you from Lexington, Kentucky, home of the World Equestrian Games. About 4 miles from my house, actually. And you're listening to Horse Tip Daily. Well, I wanted to mention the World Equestrian Games. I don't know if everybody noticed that the prices have come down on a lot of the tickets. So if you were thinking it was unaffordable before, you might want to look into it again and get down here for this once-in-a-lifetime event going on at the end of September, beginning of October. You can find out more about it at alltechfeigames.com. Well, today we have a photographer on who has taken pictures of some of the best horses in the world that will be here at the World Equestrian Games, and his name is Scott Trees. He brings us another tip on horse photography. We haven't had him on for a little while. We thought, well, this is photography season right here in the middle of summer. And, Scott is one of the most famous and one of the most respected horse photographers in the world. And we're just thrilled that he takes time to sit back and chat with me about how we can take better pictures as well. And, one of the things, when Scott takes pictures of horses, they're usually well-fed, well-maintained, and horses that are treated right. Well, you want to find out how to treat your horse right and make sure that you're feeding them the right things? FeedXL does all the smart stuff that it takes to formulate and balance a horse's diet. It takes all the science and math that a doctor of equine nutrition learns and makes it all super easy and fun for you to use. All you have to do is plug in some simple details to see if your horse is having his nutritional requirements met. FeedXL is like having your own personal equine nutritionist, and it's used by leading equine nutritionists to formulate balanced diets for their clients. Using the details about your horse and what you feed him, FeedXL will do some serious math to calculate if your horse's nutritional requirements are being met. You can see the results displayed in numerous ways, including an easy-to-read graph that highlights excesses and deficiencies in his diet. And I mean, this thing is thorough. It goes through all the vitamins and hay and grain and just everything you feed your horse. Learn more about equine nutrition and how to feed your horse for performance by visiting FeedXL's Learning Center at feedxl.com. That's feedxl.com. Let's say hi to Scott. Well, hi, Scott, and welcome back to Horse Tip Daily.
Hi, Glenn. How are you?
Okay, and I hear that you're back from traveling around the world and come back just in time for summertime down there in Texas, a little hot.
Yes, a little hot, especially today.
I've gotten a couple
of from one hot country to another.
Yeah, you come from the Middle East to Texas. There you go.
Right.
You could at least make a stop off like in Massachusetts where it's a little cooler.
Or somewhere, or Hawaii or something.
So we have been getting some emails from people who are thoroughly enjoying these photography tips. And,
well, I'm glad to hear it.
And I think they love you to death. I think that's the other thing.
Well, thank you.
But no, and I always have fun talking to you. You wanted to talk a little bit about summertime and photography in the summer.
I did. It's summertime and horse shows and kids are home, and that's one of the reasons that I think a lot of people buy a camera is to chronicle, their kids and their showing or, their each other. I have to say that probably some of the most horrendous photo sessions I've ever had are when husbands and wives work together for this stuff. There's one couple in one of the breeding industries that is legendary amongst us photographers for getting in enormous fights during photo sessions. But, families and those kinds of things can be difficult. But it is fun to have a camera and have something that, you can, today's digital world, that allows you to, capture moments when your kids come out with a big smile on their face after winning a championship or just the moments that they have around their horses. And that's really what I think the beauty of digital has offered so many people, is that it's allowed the normal non-pro person to really put an excellent quality camera in their hands and have a chance to get some good results and see it instantly. So One of the things I'm going to kind of discuss a couple different venues. One is the situation when you're at home. A lot of times people want to grab that quick shot of their son or daughter with their horse and a portrait to send to friend or grandma or something like that. And one of the problems that a lot of people run into, number one, is that they'll take a picture standing about 3 or 4 feet away from horse and child, and then it comes back and they see it, and the horse's head is 8 feet long, and the kid looks, 12 feet tall, and the distortion is terrible. And so one of the things you want to do when you're doing a portrait of a person and a horse, or even a person, is you want to use a mid-length focal lens, or even longer. So starting at like 85, and then a lot of these zoom lenses today are like 70 to 200, and you can even go into 200 and blur out your background a little bit. But a wide lens, especially on the point-and-shoot cameras, a wider lens isn't going to work, because the distortion problem is going to come along.
Okay.
So that's one thing I see a lot, and not just in portraits, but sometimes in headshots and those kinds of things when everything looks out of proportion, and that's because our brain sort of adapts in our head if you put your hand 5 inches in front of your face or at the length of your arm away, your brain basically says your hand is the same size, but a camera doesn't do that. And so, I think a good average focal length is like a 135, and you can set your zoom on that focal length, or you could actually have a lens for that. But that starts compressing things up a little bit to where they look proportionally correct.
Okay.
Another situation you run into sometimes is, a lot of times most people have been taught from years and years and years ago when cameras didn't have great sensitivity, and you've probably heard stand with the sun behind your back so you have enough light to,
yes. Yep.
Well, that's where that came from, really, is that in the early days of photography, they had to have tremendous amount of light because the emulsions on the film didn't have a lot of sensitivity. Well, of course, that's all changed. And one of the problems, when you do that sun behind the back rule, is number one, you have no depth in your shot because you have no shadow, and that's what gives the two-dimensional element of a photograph a third-dimensional feel is shadow. The other problem you run into is everybody's squinting. Horse is squinting, child is squinting.
Yes, you're right.
And, nobody, and you get these pictures back with faces crunched up, and even, poor horses, especially those blue-eyed horses, have a problem with it. And one little trick that's real easy to do that avoids that is go and take the photograph in the shade. Most every place has somewhere that has a shade tree, and if you kind of take your horse and child just walk them into the shadow and have them walk out toward the light until they just come to the edge of that shadow where the sun starts hitting their face. Don't let it hit their face or their subject, but step them back in a little bit. And what you're going to see with this is it's going to give a nice, even light over horse and child. Now, this is a little easier to do with a gray horse or a lighter horse than a dark horse, but the principle still works the same.
I was going to say, if the horse is black, do they get lost?
They don't really. I mean, that part, if you set them against a dark, like in a doorway, for example, and yes, you have to compensate a little bit for that because your exposure is going to vary. It might end up being a little overexposed because most meters in cameras are defaulted towards trying to keep detail in the shadows. So usually what happens in something like that is the camera tends to overexpose the shot. But just speaking in averages, if you have a nice grassy background, let's say some trees, and you put the horse and child in the shadow and just to the edge of the shadow, because what will happen is that the grass or the dirt or the concrete will sort of act as a reflector and bounce a little bit of light up into that shot. And you might have to play with your exposure a little bit, which again is one of the beauties of digital, is that you can take a test shot. And I always encourage people to do this. Take a few test shots, dial in your exposure. So if it's a little dark, you can lighten it up. If it's a little bright, you can darken it up. But this you'll find will, A, eliminate the squint problem, B, will allow you to have a real nice soft light on the shot. And, for example, there's an event I do in Albuquerque at the Arabian Youth Nationals where I photograph the kids for one of the magazines, and they have these beautiful adobe walls there, and they oftentimes I'll have them just step in the overhang or that nice warm Adobe color pops up, and it makes for a great background. And
can I ask a question? Can I do a
Sure.
follow-up there? So if there's no shadow available, let's go back to the sun at your back, sun behind you taking the picture. Was it better then to get at an angle so that...
A little bit of an angle,
okay.
Yes.
All right.
Because what happens if you take a look, and a real easy thing to do is just to go outside and put your hand in front of your face where the light hits the palm of your hand. And then just start moving your hand in front of your face one direction or another and a circle, and watch how the shadow starts affecting the shape of your hand. And you'll start seeing that once you start getting just a little bit of shadow on your hand, all of a sudden your hand takes on a whole different characteristic. And the same holds true in a photograph. And so that shadow is what gives us a depth. And if you start taking a look, as a matter of fact, I'm doing a lighting, an online course for lighting here in starting in September. And that's one of the things that I'll work on with people is actually trying to let people learn how to see light and what it will do with you, because light is the photographer's paintbrush.
Right.
And so you really have to learn light in order to, get the most out of your images. But so a little bit of shadow, a little 45-degree angle. Of course, it depends on the time of the day too. But one of the things that stepping into the shadow does is it really eliminates the problem. It doesn't stop the direction of light. You're still going to have, if you take a look and even do this situation with your hand in a shadow, you're going to see that there's still a brightness and a darkness depending on where you stand, but it's a much softer look. And it's just it's a trick a lot of us do with the pros that to eliminate the squinting problem for number one, and number two, it really makes for a very nice light.
Well, that's a great tip, and that's something that unless you're told or find it by complete accident, you don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that, I always tell people, experiment. So, again, the beauty of digital is that you can shoot to your heart's content and adjust your exposure so easily and so quickly to really get it right. And in the course of that, you might learn that, like I said, oftentimes if you have a dark horse in a dark doorway, what your automatic exposure tends to do is too much light in the shot and makes it too bright. And you actually, surprisingly, most people are surprised that you actually have to tell the camera to shoot a little darker by going a stop or so down. But the other thing that is how do you pose these kids? I mean, one of the problems is we call them grip and grins when they come out of the rail and stand next to your horse and hold him and smile. But one of the problems that I see a lot of times when people try and take their own pictures is they have the horse the child standing too far back from the horse. So you want to shoot rather into the side of the horse, kind of turn the horse 3/4 front, and have your child sit next to or stand next to the shoulder if they're leading them. And that makes for a much nicer, smoother composition. Also, you're better off to have your child turn at a little bit of an angle. The tendency for everybody is to turn straight into the camera, and that's not very flattering on anybody. So turn a little bit sideways. If they come out of the ring on horseback, again, rather than shooting from the side, shoot from a little 3/4 front. Like take the front of the horse's chest and take one giant step right or left, which actually lets you shoot a little bit into the point of the horse's shoulder. And that will give you a nice angle. The horse can turn his head a little bit toward you, and child can smile, and it makes for a very nice shot. And the other thing is that people, because they said they shoot too wide, or B, they get too far back. So you've got the horse and the building and the parking lot, and in there somewhere is a shot of the child. And so frame your shot to where you can have them fill up the shot, or don't be afraid to move in and chop them off at the chest. Shoot that horse from the chest up. And these are things that make for much nicer pictures. Now that's more along the pose side of things, though. I mean,
right.
These are situations, like I said, when they, it's the impromptu moments with horses and kids that I think are wonderful. And this is the thing that I always encourage people to do. It's like, get away. I hate what I call the Kmart smile that all these kids have. It's like you've been so ingrained to smile, and they get this very false smile on them. And I generally find that
I've been when you look at even model pictures, you can tell the ones that are generally having a good time in the shoot and the ones who are faking the smile.
Exactly. I mean, there's a whole, it's the body language, it's the way the face looks. And the biggest thing is a lot of times I'll tell the kids I'm not really photographing them when I actually am. And it's those unguarded moments, and especially the parents. I mean, it's going to be, oh, mom, oh, dad, there's going to be that whole interaction going on that they're also, many kids, as I said, are conditioned to put on this, this false smile. So I basically let kids walk around with their horses and, take pictures of them when they're washing their horses or, walking in a field and let them eat some grass. And, horses don't always have to be standing with their heads up and their ears pricked up. I mean, there's those moments. I have a wonderful shot of my granddaughter that when she was probably 2 years old, and we were inside a stall, but this horse loved snacks. And Taylor was holding this bag of snacks in her hands, and the horse leaned down to look at the snacks, and Taylor just leaned her head against his nose. And, there was a moment. And those are the kinds of things that you have to condition yourself to look for. But those are the kinds of shots that I think most families really enjoy, is those unguarded, captured moments. So, again, keep your camera handy. Be alert that it's not just the posy stuff, but it's also the non-pose moments that can give you those shots that you want to put in your album or hang on your wall.
Okay, great. And how's your website doing?
Website's good. Like I said, we're getting ready to put an announcement up there for some. I'm going to start a series of online seminars that are going to be oriented towards anybody at any level of photography. The first one's going to be about lighting and seeing light. It's actually called Learning How to See Light. And several others I've got planned that I think will be interesting, and they're going to be given in a webinar format. So people can come online
great.
And
can they sign up on your website, Scott? Can they sign up on your website?
They can come to my website, and I'm also doing it through a great organization called Equine Photographers Network.
Yeah.
That is actually hosting the site and the show. And so they can sign up through there as well. You don't have to be a member.
Great. So that's open to anybody. So even I would learn something and not be over my head.
Even you would learn something. Challenges you might be for me, I think I could teach you something.
Thank you, Scott. We'll have you back again. Scott knows me well, for sure. Well, thanks to Scott again for joining us. And also, we love to hear from you. I love to get your emails, and you can drop me one at Glenn with 2 N's at horseradionetwork.com. We have some fantastic shows that are now posted on all the other shows on the network. We have a total of 8 shows now. Don't forget to check out the new show that I do called Tack and Habit. It's become one of people's favorites. Go to tackandhabit.com. It's just a little show that Helena B. and I do about products. We just talk about 2 products a week and just have a lot of fun doing it. That's at tackandhabit.com. And I'll be back again tomorrow with another new expert and a different horse tip. Until then, stay safe, everyone.